Hello everyone, my name is Elizaveta and I am a student in LEH 355 class, the same class that we all take together. And this is my video presentation on the topic raised in Unit 6 of our class textbook, Taking Sides, Controversial Views on Bioethical Issues, written by Carol Levine. And the question that I was assigned by our professor is whether or not community consultation and research protect vulnerable groups. And my standpoint is yes, it does protect vulnerable groups. So the idea of community consultation has always been a part of any decision making within the social group. Although it is important to understand that community consultation mostly comes from the outside of the community, which is one of the factors why it could be looked upon as an unnecessary factor and maybe a secondary opinion. When it comes to community, we can be speaking of a family group where it is almost impossible to build relationships without consulting on the most important matters, or we can speak of a neighborhood community that includes thousands of people's voices and opinions. It is a very organic and logical process when the sides come to discuss an important topic that will interact with their daily existence or participating in making once in a lifetime decision. However, there are many situations when community consultation is being done for the purpose of breaking the natural order of things that's prevailing in that specific community or within a secluded group of people. Some examples would be initiating mandatory vaccination in underserved communities or conducting research on community behaviors with the goal to create a product or a service for communal use. Over the course of the years with the technological and industrial development, mass media, such as newspapers and online agencies and various outlets of information, including social networks, and simple human exchange of information. Think about your grandmothers exchanging some important information with some other grandmothers. We are now starting to see a more detailed environment of vulnerable communities in the way they function and how community consultation positively affecting the existence and well-being of vulnerable groups, as well as giving them voice and power for changes. First of all, we need to define the vulnerable communities and groups of people that are directly or indirectly affected by such before implementing into the topic of research and protection that comes with community consultation. According to Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethical Issues, in the context of human subject research, individuals or groups are considered vulnerable if they are unable fully or independently to protect their own interests, either due to certain characteristics, let's say age or immaturity, or circumstances, which could be illnesses, incarceration, or poverty. A vulnerable population could be generally described as people who are potentially not able to exercise control over how their interests are being represented. There are different categories of vulnerable groups of people. The categorical or subgroup approach defines vulnerable population as those groups in society whose members share features that might make them vulnerable. For example, the U.S. Code of Federal Regulation lists children, prisoners, pregnant women, mentally disabled people, and economically or educationally disadvantaged persons as vulnerable groups. There's also a contextual vulnerability. It includes, but not limited to, all the 6 subgroups, which are: 1, cognitive or communicative vulnerability, the inability to understand information and make decisions either due to capacity, let's say young children, or circumstances, which are stressful emergencies and language barriers. Number 2 is institutional vulnerability, being subject to an authority relationship in a formal or informal structure, let's say prisoners or military personnel. Subgroup number 3 is differential vulnerability, is being subject to authority of others. Let's say the relationship is between the kid and the mother, or once again, military personnel. Number 4 is medical vulnerability, let's say, having issues and serious health conditions that prevent certain individual from being able to exercise full potential of their opinion and then their rights to make a decision in the society. Number 5 is economic vulnerability, which includes being disadvantaged in the distribution of social goods and services, such as income, housing, or healthcare. And number 6, which is going to be the last one that I'm listing, is a social vulnerability, and it means being a member of an undervalued or disenfranchised social group. Community consultation is designed to hear our community's needs and identify solutions for various problems. It is needed to recognize and accommodate the relevant ideas and solutions of a given community for a specific project. For example, community consultation for flu shots related initiatives may include consulting with doctors, groups, people who are working with the flu patients closely and directly, and being directly or indirectly affected by such implementations, and also potential receivers of the treatment, potential patients. Also, conducting genetics research in tribal community may require discussing studies with existing local government and community members. That could also be an example of community consultation. Community consultation lays out vast opportunities for creating the most good, as it is intended for bringing in positive changes for the vulnerable communities. Whether it is infrastructural development for providing clean water in rural areas in third world countries, or urban planning for the underserved communities, it is designed to improve the living conditions, first of all. Community engagement in the environment with large population of vulnerable groups is extremely important. Most of the time, those people are under or misrepresented by their governing and supervising agents. So engaging the vulnerable groups in community consultation protect them from being taken advantage of and open lots of possibilities for lifestyle improvement. Pregnant women speaking up against unfair distribution of medical health coverage in their local hospitals, and with the power of community consultation, now pregnant women can reach out to local community planners and seek for reconsidered policies. The two-way exchange of information always helps tremendously to improve the well-being of oftenly misrepresented or underrepresented population to which we assign our vulnerable groups. It helps to create a collective identity for the vulnerable groups, and with the numbers there comes power to start things moving. The utilitarian principle is one of the most applicable when it comes to giving voice and allowing for a two-way flow of information for vulnerable communities. Utilitarianism holds that the most ethical choice is the one that will produce the greatest good for the greatest number. It is also the most common approach to moral reasoning used in community consultation because of the way in which it accounts for production of the greater good. John Stuart Mill, someone whose name you are very familiar with. We have read a lot of information about him throughout the semester. Thought that democracy and proper deliberation about issues affecting common good require proper representation and articulation of the interests of citizens. Political participation of the vulnerable groups, now we can say that community consultation could be considered as such, provide the best assurance that the interests of the governed will be properly appreciated and considered. Then it applies directly to community consultation and the way it's being imposed on the vulnerable communities. There are many ethical issues that arise when research is conducted with vulnerable populations, including children, individuals who are somehow impaired due to certain conditions or some forms of mental illnesses, prisoners, participants in community research. These populations, these groups of people, these communities require special protection as research participants for both ethical and historic reasons. including the potential for exploitation and the challenges of obtaining informed consent as a means of respecting participant autonomy. So, community consultation must be considered as a valuable tool to be used by vulnerable communities as a part of their social representation. That's all I had to say for this presentation. I hope I made sense. I hope I made it a little clearer. Obviously, there will be some closed captioning in this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dedicating your time, and have a great one. I'll probably see you around. Bye.